vast, unending expanse of the Mojave Desert, far from the closest semblance of civilization, there stood a solitary, dilapidated house. This house, isolated and seemingly abandoned, was home to a girl named Eliza. Eliza was a figure of mystery, a lone soul in the midst of an unforgiving wilderness. Eliza's life was one of solitude and survival, her only companions the howling wind and the shifting sands. But her isolated existence was shattered one fateful night when she discovered a strange, ancient book buried beneath the floorboards of her home. The book was bound in withered leather, its pages filled with cryptic writings and bizarre illustrations. As Eliza delved into the book, she unwittingly unleashed an ancient curse. The desert around her began to change, the nights growing longer and the days filled with a sense of foreboding. Shadows moved in the corners of her vision, and the wind whispered in a language that chilled her to the bone. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came with the appearance of figures in the desert, ghostly apparitions that roamed the dunes under the light of the moon, their eyes glowing with a malevolent light. Eliza realized that the book had opened a doorway to another realm, a realm of darkness and nightmares. Desperate to end the curse, Eliza sought the help of a reclusive hermit named Silas, rumored to possess knowledge of the occult. Silas lived in a ramshackle cabin on the outskirts of the desert, a man weathered and twisted by his years of isolation. Silas revealed that the book was known as the Tome of Shadows, an artifact of great power and danger. It had been crafted by a cult that worshipped ancient, malevolent entities, and its pages held the key to summoning these beings into the world. As the curse intensified, the fabric of reality around Eliza's home began to warp. The desert became a nightmarish landscape, inhabited by unspeakable horrors, creatures of shadow and flame that preyed upon the living. Eliza and Silas embarked on a perilous journey to find the heart of the curse, a place in the desert where the veil between worlds was thinnest. Their path was fraught with danger as they navigated a landscape that defied the laws of nature, facing the twisted spawn of the tome's dark magic. Their journey led them to an ancient ruin, a temple half buried in the sand, its stones etched with the same cryptic symbols as the tome. Inside, they found the remains of the cult, their bodies preserved in a state of eternal torment, a warning of the power they had unleashed. In the temple's inner sanctum, Eliza and Silas performed a ritual to seal the doorway opened by the tome. The ritual was a battle of wills against the forces conjured by the book, a struggle to close the breach before the entities could fully enter the world. As the ritual reached its climax, the entities manifested in their true, horrific forms, beings of darkness that sought to break free from their ancient prison. In a final act of courage, Eliza used the tome to draw the entities back, sacrificing herself to ensure their imprisonment. With the closing of the gateway, the desert returned to its natural state. The horrors that had plagued it banished back to their realm. Silas, bearing the burden of what had transpired, took the tome, vowing to protect it and ensure that its dark magic would never again be unleashed. The story of Eliza, the girl in the middle of nowhere, became a legend in the scattered settlements of the Mojave. Her sacrifice was remembered as a testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable evil. And in the heart of the desert, where the ruins of the ancient temple still stood, the memory of that struggle lingered, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lies waiting in the forgotten corners of the world, ever eager to break through into our reality.
Now the second story.
In the vast, desolate expanse of the Northumberland moors in England, there existed a small, seemingly insignificant cottage. This cottage, nestled in a secluded glen and surrounded by the endless expanse of wild heather and windswept hills, was the home of a little girl named Emily. Emily was an orphan, having lost her parents in mysterious circumstances. She lived with her grandmother, Mrs. Agatha Harker, a stern and secretive woman with a deep knowledge of herbal lore and ancient traditions. Their life was one of isolation and simplicity, far removed from the nearest village. The moors were a place of stark beauty and hidden dangers, of whispering winds and shifting shadows. Emily grew up with the legends of the moors, tales of ghostly apparitions and otherworldly creatures that roamed rolling hills and deep, shadowy valleys. One chilly autumn evening, as the sun set behind the distant hills, casting long shadows across the moors, Emily stumbled upon an ancient, withered stone circle. It was a place she had been warned to avoid, a place her grandmother spoke of in hushed, fearful tones. Driven by a child's curiosity, Emily stepped into the circle. The air around her grew colder, and the sky seemed to darken. The wind carried a low, haunting melody, and the stones seemed to hum with an ancient power. That night, Emily's life changed forever. She began to see things, terrible things, that no one else could see. Shadows moved in the corners of her eyes, and she heard whispers on the wind, voices that called out to her in the darkness. Mrs. Harker, realizing what had happened, revealed the truth to Emily. The stone circle was a gateway, a place where the veil between worlds was thin. Emily had awakened something ancient and malevolent, a presence that had lain dormant beneath the moors for centuries. As the days grew shorter and the nights longer, the presence grew stronger. Unnatural mists rolled across the moors, and ghostly lights danced in the distance. The villagers in the nearest town spoke of a curse, of a darkness that had descended upon the moors. Emily, with her grandmother's guidance, sought to understand and undo what she had unleashed. Mrs. Harker's knowledge of ancient lore led them to a series of hidden, arcane texts that spoke of the entity, a creature of shadow and despair, bound to the stone circle by the ancient druids. The only way to banish the entity was to perform a ritual on the night of the winter solstice, the longest night of the year. The ritual required a sacrifice, a willing soul to take the entity's place beneath the moors. As the solstice approached, the entity's power grew. The cottage was besieged by nightmarish creatures, twisted forms that emerged from the mists. Emily and her grandmother stood firm, protected by ancient charms and the strength of their will. On the night of the solstice, they ventured to the stone circle, armed with the knowledge and tools required to perform the ritual. The entity revealed itself in its terrifying true form, a mass of shadows and screaming faces, its presence a black hole that threatened to consume all light. In a harrowing battle against the entity and its minions, Emily and Mrs. Harker chanted the ancient incantations, their voices rising above the howling wind. As the ritual reached its climax, Mrs. Harker made the ultimate sacrifice, giving her soul to bind the entity once more. With the break of dawn, the entity was banished, the mists cleared, and peace returned to the moors. Emily was left alone, her grandmother's sacrifice a painful memory, but her bravery and love had saved the moors from unspeakable evil. The story of Emily and the ancient entity became a legend on the moors, a tale of courage and sacrifice in the face of darkness. The stone circle remained, a silent guardian, a reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the realms of ancient and unfathomable horrors.
Now the third story.
In the remote reaches of the Appalachian Mountains, shrouded in the dense fog that rolled endlessly through through its craggy peaks and deep valleys, there lay a small, isolated cabin. In this cabin lived a little boy named Samuel with his father, a grizzled, solitary man who had turned his back on the world. Samuel's life was one of seclusion and silence, his world confined to the rugged wilderness that surrounded their cabin. His father, a man of few words, had always warned him to stay away from the dark woods that loomed ominously at the edge of their property. But to a curious child like Samuel, the forest held an irresistible allure. One fateful evening, as twilight descended upon the mountains, casting long, haunting shadows across the land, Samuel ventured into the woods. He was drawn deeper and deeper by a strange, hypnotic melody that seemed to echo through the trees, a song of both beauty and sorrow. As night fell, Samuel found himself lost in the heart of the forest, the melody leading him to an ancient, forgotten graveyard. The graves, old and weathered, were marked with strange symbols that seemed to dance in the moonlight. That night, Samuel unwittingly awakened something ancient and malevolent that had been slumbering beneath the graveyard, a spirit of the forest, twisted and corrupted by the passage of time and the forgotten rituals performed in its honor. Samuel returned home, but he was not alone. The spirit had followed him, its presence a cold, oppressive weight that hung in the air. His father, sensing the change, realized with horror what Samuel had done. The spirit began to haunt their cabin, its form never fully seen, but its presence felt in every creak of the wood and whisper of the wind. Samuel's nights were plagued by nightmares, visions of a twisted, dark version of the forest he had so loved. His father, desperate to save his son, sought the help of a little wise woman, known to possess knowledge of the old ways and the ancient spirits of the land. She revealed that the spirit was bound to the boy, feeding off his life force. To banish it, they would need to perform a ritual on the site where Samuel had first encountered the spirit. As they prepared for the ritual, the spirit's attacks grew more ferocious, manifesting as shadowy figures and malevolent whispers that sought to drive them to madness. Samuel's father fought to protect him, his love for his son the only thing keeping the darkness at bay. On the night of the ritual, they returned to the graveyard, the air thick with an otherworldly chill. The wise woman chanted ancient incantations, her voice a beacon of light in the suffocating darkness. The spirit revealed itself in its true form during the ritual, a grotesque, twisted creature of shadow and malice, its form a manifestation of the pain and anger it had accumulated over centuries. In a harrowing battle of wills, the wise woman fought to bind the spirit back to its resting place. Samuel, amidst his terror, found a strength he did not know he possessed, his innocence and purity a stark contrast to the corruption of the spirit. As the ritual reached its climax, the spirit was dragged screaming back into the earth, the graveyard returning to its silent, somber state. Samuel and his father, exhausted but alive, watched as the first light of dawn broke over the mountains. In the aftermath, they left the cabin, unable to remain in a place that had been touched by such darkness. The story of Samuel and the spirit of the forest became a whispered legend in the valleys of the Appalachians, a tale of innocence facing the horrors that lurk in the forgotten corners of the world. And in the heart of the forest, the ancient graveyard lay still once more, a silent guardian of the old, dark secrets of the land, and of a little boy who had faced the unimaginable.